Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I want to continue my little series on pet peeves and try to put a more of a positive spin on them. I was talking about like player behaviors that really kind of drive me bananas. And I made a little video a little while ago. And DeVay Breon Jackson. It was about those kind of pet peeves and lumped a whole bunch together. DBJ asked me to do videos on each one. I said, sure, that'd be kind of cool. But I thought about it, and I've already made one, but I wanted to put more of a positive spin on this. And it's funny because, I'm going to talk about working the ref today. And it's something that I've certainly done. And just put a little bit of a positive spin on that, or like, I'll get to that point. But it's funny because I've been talking about this stuff like very recently, if you've been watching my channel. So at the risk of repeating myself, I'm going to repeat myself. But I think it's a cool topic. And so we all know that guy. Probably most of us have been that guy. I certainly been that guy once or twice, maybe 3 times. A lot of times inadvertently, where you got a player at the table just kind of working the ref. And generally, to me, the hallmark of this is they're obviously trying to gain an edge. And it's usually through some kind of out-of-game behavior, although sometimes it can be in-game behavior. But it's this idea where they're being very presumptive, they're being very argumentative, kind of adversarial, occasionally like disrespectful. And what the players, and sometimes they're not always that abrasive, but what they're trying to do, in my experience, is they're trying to dictate game world reality. They're pre-narrating success. My character is going to do this, and this is going to work. This should work. Or it's the thing where something happens in the game, and the player's like, hey, wait a minute, I should have been able to do this. This should have worked there, and this should have never have happened. And occasionally that's the case. Like Game Master forgets something, but that guy that's just always bitter. He's always angry. He's always got something. It's almost like I hate to say sore loser, because it's not about winning and losing, but somebody that just they don't like the way things are going, and they're really just kind of working the ref. It's that guy just like at a sporting event, just like that was a bad call and all that. Everybody jumps on the field and runs on the field and gets in a big fight. Except hopefully we don't do that in role-playing games. And if you do, cut it out. It's that sort of like another way it can kind of show itself is in that rules lawyering, which being a rules paralegal isn't so bad, but in that constant like well actually argumentative manner, and it's always generally to get an edge for yourself, at least or for the party, but generally for yourself. That's what I've seen it the most. And just a lot of times it can end up being like constant disagreement with interpretations or rulings. So you become that player that jumps off the bench and argues with the ref. And so that's a behavior that drives me up a wall, because it grinds play to a halt. It makes things not fun, and that's the guy you don't want to play with because they're so argumentative and so adversarial. Now I was reminded of more of a positive spin on this, and I've certainly done that where I just kind of wanted sometimes what's happened with me is I would have done things differently. I'm a game master, and I don't know if any of you have suffered from game master-itis. There's a lot of ways that game master-itis can express itself, but sometimes as a game master you play in a game, and especially if you know the system, you're very comfortable with the system, maybe not, but you start thinking of things you would have done differently, and you don't shut your mouth, you actually start talking about it. And end up arguing with the oh, it probably worked better if you did this, and every once in a while that's cool, but just when it becomes overboard. That's probably where I've been more guilty of working the ref more in the past, but I've done that. There's a big difference. I was reminded of this in the game that I just ran between working the ref in this really adversarial manner and kind of offering a little bit of help. Or if the referee wants some help in terms of like, I'm not sure what to do here. Maybe they don't even say it, but maybe it's obvious to you that they're kind of stuck or they've missed something important. And so sometimes as a game master, I appreciate when people say, hey, by the way, this is how this works or whatever. And this is a really, really, really fine tightrope to walk. And so as a player in a game, I'm always really careful about how I do that. But that's for me, kind of putting the positive spin on it is being like a resource to the game master. And to me, one of the bigger differences, outside of number one, you don't do it all the time because then it's just annoying. And a lot of times you have to think to yourself, well, how important is this right now? Did they do it a little wrong here, but it's not going to really affect things? I mean, Anthony did a great job. Runesinger did a great job the other day. I adjudicated or gave him the wrong mechanic for breaking a door down. Mechanically, it wasn't too much different than what I told him to do, and he just kind of went with it. And it worked. It would have worked better the way it says in the book, but we did okay. That's something where afterwards said, hey, it's on page such and such. Okay, so that works. That works better. But that thing where you're just kind of available as a resource to the game master. I'll give you a good example here. Here's this game. Basic fantasy role playing game. Great game. It's like $5, $6 on Amazon. There's something like 106, 110 spells in here. Now I've been playing this game. I've been playing like BX D&D, regular D&D, which is just based on, for 36 years. Well, I started playing it 36 years ago. I haven't played it 36 years straight. I took a big break in the middle. But this does not have the full spell list of some of the other games. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to remember all these in the heat of the moment as a game master. And so for a player to offer some information about a particular spell, or just to keep the spell straight for their own character, or if I come up with something and they say, hey, this spell works this way, it's right here on this page, see, that's cool. To me, that's not working the ref. There, the intent is to be helpful, as opposed to gaining an edge for your character. Big difference. One of the things I also noticed, though, as in this last game I ran, and just in other games, I was thinking back to other sessions I ran where I ran into a problem here or there. It was not a big problem. I made some videos recently about some of my takeaways from the session, and I focused more on things I needed to work on, but the session was great. People had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. But there's always that idea of trying to make your game better, and be a better game master, period, better player, better. But I was reminded just how easy it is to kind of accidentally, unintentionally, and most importantly, unknowingly, remove some player agency. And there were some moments in this recent game I ran where I could have asked the players, even though the what they were asking me or what they obviously wanted was rather improbable, I could have said, okay, why don't you roll, this, and they could have added some style points because we were playing Ubiquity. It still would have been a Hail Mary pass, but I didn't mean to. But I realized in hindsight, there was a couple other situations where it was a little bit, fuzzier. But I removed a little bit of player agency in terms of they had an intent, and I didn't let them roll dice for it. I didn't call for a dice roll, and I just kind of ruled this is going to be impossible and moved on. And we discussed it afterwards, and we didn't nobody grinded the game to a halt. But I think it would have been okay in at least one of those situations, probably a couple, where if the player said, hey, I think probably the best thing to do here, or I think I should have a chance to roll some dice based on this ability and whatnot. I'll spend style points or whatever, and that would have been okay. And that's a big difference between the person that's just constantly hammering. I mean, you get it. It sounds like a nuance. It's not. You can spot that guy a mile away. And so I always have to make sure that I'm not being that guy. But at the same time, I have to make sure that I'm not shutting people down. And you can't offer any kind of insight or input to me as a game master. And so that's kind of a long discussion about a pet peeve of mine. But trying to put a bit of a positive spin on how that a lot of these behaviors they're not. Some are just bad, but there's some behaviors that are pet peeves that aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves. It's when you amp them up to 50 that they're horrid. So that's one of my other pet peeves is that guy that's working the ref all the time. There was something else really clever I wanted to say here. I'm totally forgetting it in the heat of the moment. But player agency too. That was a really clever thing, and I've discussed this many times. When I'm talking about removing player agency, at least in this context, I'm talking about what I tend to define as player agency. I understand people have various differences of how big they make that sphere, but to me, the idea that as a player, you you control everything that your character says, does, thinks, and feels. And so sometimes I'm removing that player agency by accident by not allowing them to make the attempt. I had to remember, thinking about it afterwards, it doesn't say it in this game, but in the game it's based on, in the BX book on page 60, has a little section saying there's always a chance. So I have to remember that. So yeah, working the ref, don't do it, but walk the tightrope.